Okay, so what we're going to be doing is looking at Dominaria United. It's going to be a little bit different this time. So I felt like there's either 4 to 5 different decks or 20 plus different decks in the format. And a lot of people said this, but we're just going to focus on 5 because I feel like many other decks can be collapsed into these. But additionally, rather than just looking at commons and uncommons, there's a kind of modification that's been made by some people. I think Sandra Kirsten's is one of them that's saying, you can count on getting, a couple rares, so maybe 0 to 2 rares, up to 8 uncommons with no duplicates, and then the rest commons, max of 2 of any common. Um, so we've kind of done that. And then there's also some advances that have been made beyond just 17 lands by using those data to look at like raw power plus synergy to figure out what an expected win rate might potentially be for a deck. So what we've done is we have 5 different DMU decks focused on like best of 1 premier drafts, and then we'll look at them as kind of a guide template for what these decks could potentially look like and how they might succeed and where their issues might be, and then kind of look at the expected win rates of those decks as well and what might be driving potentially good outcomes. So we'll start on the aggro side and go to the control side. So probably the most aggro of the decks in the format are the white X that look to leverage tokens going wide and then heroic charge. I think white-red probably performs the best out of these. So different from some other strategies that are aggressive in past formats, this isn't necessarily a deck that's looking to get you dead on turn 4, 5, 6. It certainly has the potential to do that. Oftentimes that'll involve a heroic charge or 2 somewhere in turns 5 or 6 potentially, and then going wide with cards like Keldon Strike Team, which is a big factor in the deck. It's very strong in the decks that can kick it. So there may be some domain decks we'll look at that are 4 or 5 color where you can kick this, but unless it's the aggro type domain, which we'll look at, it's not terribly strong in those. You're really looking to drop this and put 5 power on the board for 5 mana and give it all haste, plus any other creatures that you might have enter the battlefield on that turn would also gain haste. And then Argivian Cavalier. So those are kind of like your stellar 3-drops that are common. And then 2-drop wise, the majority of the 2-drops that are very good to great in this format are uncommon. There are some common ones that are passable. In a deck like this, you can get by with like a Banalish Sleeper or a Goblin Picker. Getting 3 power on the board on turn 2 can be useful. And then Goblin Picker is a card that can maybe help you filter to, your way to end the game, which might be, like the heroic charge we said. But then all the other 2s are uncommon. So Knight of Dawn's Light, exceptionally strong, as well as Missionary. If you can kick it in particular to get back, like a strike team, or maybe a rare that you might have, like an Archangel of Wrath if you're fortunate, or potentially some of these other strong uncommons. And then in terms of interaction, a lot of the very good interaction isn't common in 2 mana. It's like Lightning Strike is a way to kill most 2 to 4 drops even. There are some 4 drops that won't die to it, but it does kill a lot of good creatures, or can go face if you need it at the end. Destroy Evil is going to kill a lot of those creatures that are 4+ mana. In particular, the cost reducer creatures like the Clarion Terrors. That's the biggest one, but all the other ones will get hit by it as well. Where you can really play up on mana, do this at the end of turn, for example. And there are some good enchantments, most of them are in white, that you can kind of pick off with Destroy Evil as well. And then Take Up the Shield is a great way to, if you're aggro on aggro, or a mid-range that's turning the corner to have your creature live and swing the life gain so you can continue attacking and really mess up their math and the racing they thought they might have been doing. Allow you to continue to be the aggro deck. And then other uncommons, Pair Binding's fine. Their dex is better, but this is still a good removal. Play end of turn and then maybe set up a big attack the turn after that, or battle him again. The potential life gain can be helpful against the aggro or the other mid-range decks. And then Skyrider, is a great way to alpha if you don't have heroic charge, and then kick it and still deal a lot of damage to the face, for example, of an opponent. And then Archangel Wrath is one of the best rears in the set, so if you can kick it once, it's great. If you can kick it twice, fantastic. And this just tries to get creatures down, go wide, and then overwhelm the opponent. Squeeze also very good, and the style deck and just in general is continuing to apply pressure. Brings the creature with it when it comes in and attacks, and can just continue to be replayed. It has escape 4 and exile 4 cards basically. If you can pick up dual lands, you probably would still have preference for the red whites. You can potentially scamp one mana a little bit, but if you can get those that touch black as well, you might be able to like kick an Archangel, maybe kick a Sleeper if you have some tokens lying around that you can sack to get one of their creatures out of the way. Kick a Missionary is pretty huge as well. So if we dig into this just a little bit more, let's disconnect from the server. That's all right though. So you can see an expected win rate of about 75%, and that's with just an average win rate of 50%. So if you're like me, you have like a 63% win rate in Premier. You're going to have a higher expected win rate with a deck like this. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's kind of neat, and not as much of it's from synergy. A lot of it's just the raw power of the deck, but some of the synergies with the Go White do contribute to this. And then there are 2 styles of domain, and when we say domain, we mean 4 or 5 color. And this is kind of the aggro style. It still does have some game plan around games getting to the intermediate game. You'll see some of the intermediate to late game, like a Tatiova, even a Squee to bring back. No, you're not going to kill with those on turn 5. I mean, your Tatiova is probably not going to really be online until at earliest, turn 6 you have a Weather Sea Tree, but probably turn 8, 9, 10. But the hope or the goal here is get some early threats on the board that take advantage of having multiple basic land types, 4 to 5 of them. And those are cards like Rootwalla, and particularly Neshoba Brawler is an all-star of the deck, and even a Spreading Goblin. If you can kick it to find a land that you need, because it's just basically in type, you can get one of your duels, even like an off-color, like a black blue duel, for example, in your green-red, kind of splashing blue type of deck. And then you just try and play creatures that benefit from Colossal Growth, which doesn't just give +3/+3, and when you kick it +4/+4 and trample, but also haste to maybe get a creature out quicker. Guys mites that are going to routinely give +4, +5, +5. Your Mary's Outriders that are going to down them for 4 or 5, and still be able to, if that doesn't end the game, be able to potentially attack and give it trample next turn. And then other interaction like Lightning Strike, Fire Victory, Tail Swipe. And then there are versions of the deck that don't try and get super cute with like a multi-monstrosity, but it is something that you can play, and you can kind of treat your Colossal Growths or Giant Growths as like Dark Rituals in a way, because it'll increase the power of a creature that should be able to live through combat, and that just reduces the cost of the monstrosity. So if you can drop this on turn 3 or 4, 5/5 trample, it's pretty useful. I mean, there are concerns about opponents just bouncing it, and then you not being able to replay it anytime soon because you've got rid of your tricks. So you have to watch the gameplay that you put out there. But it can be a undercosted, overstated creature if you can get it down early. And then a card like Balmor, when you're looking to play spells to push through damage, just gives trample to all your creatures, so you don't have to be as reliant on Colossal Growth, which can be really nice. And it's an easy enough splash. You can get blue either from like Weather Sea Treaty, or just having some dual lands that touch blue, or just drawing it naturally. So blue's kind of the natural third splash, because you do have some neat and cute things you can do there. But being able to do things like kick a Counter-Strike team makes it worth having Glide in there. Have your Mary's Outriders deal 4 or 5, worth having those other colors in there as well. Kick a Fire is a victory if you have that. Some of the really strong uncommons, and then taking advantage of cards that oftentimes will wheel, like the Colossal Growths, the Guys Mites, Monstrosity, sometimes even Counter-Strike team. In terms of what's driving the performance of this deck, a decent minimum again is strength, and then some of it just comes from synergy. Just like the brawlers, the treaties, some good interaction, good 2-drops that are helping really drive that. And then being able to say I'm going to pick up a lot of lands so I can turn them on domain and being able to cast my cards is considered powerful as well, because those are potentially C to C plus level cards in a deck like this. Probably closer to C plus because of all the synergy they can provide. So now that most decks in Limited are mid-range, but if you're building these in a way that is optimal, then those two are on the more aggressive side, and these other three are actually on the more controlling side. So we're going to look at, I think, probably the Wingman Chaplain deck next, and then Domain Control, and then Terror Control. So namesake of the deck is Wingman Chaplain, and the ways to find it, like Shield Ball Sentinel. But ideally, you're able to have a good number of walls down, so have a reasonable wall package, and then at least one way to replay the Wingman Champion. So that might be, recurrence, like Herborg Repossession. If you're tackling this deck with blue, maybe rather than white or black as a main color, you may be able to have like a Tolarian Geyser that can bounce any creature, including your own, to like bounce the Chaplain. If you don't have Chaplain, bounce like an Archangel of Wrath and replay it, things like that. But then hopefully you're able to leverage some of the synergies that can exist beyond just the wall package, as pumping up your bird tokens that you've made, and putting more creatures out there. Can use Darien to protect all your tokens, potentially if they have a damage-based Wrath effect. Having creatures come into play with an Elas in play to have your opponent be in trouble, because you're gaining life, getting out of their range, and then your creatures can stack, and if they die, they're also draining your opponent for 1 as well. And then if that's not enough, there are alternative win conditions that can exist in these decks. Chaplain is the primary, but sometimes you can drain them with like a Blight Pile, or aggressive generate attacks with like a Walking Bulwark, which gives haste, as well as just signing damage equal to your toughness for these defenders as well. And then again, we have our strong 2-mana white interaction, take up the shield and destroy evil, that you just have to be thinking about if you're playing white and you really want to have at least one, if not more than one, of in your deck if you are white. It's just they're so strong, they make it very challenging for your opponent to make good blocks, good attacks, establish good defensive speed, and stabilize. And then again, trying to have good, strong, uncommon 2-drops, and then have your package. So in particular, the rares that are probably best in this type of deck is a King Darien, which is okay in green-white, but that's not like a big deck. It's more white with tokens, and in this case, tokens are birds rather than like 1/1 soldiers. And then also just Archangel is just good in any deck where you can kick it at least once. So again, having the dual lands can help you kick your repossessions, so you can bring back your Wingman Chaplain and maybe a Elas or a Darien or an Archangel if you're fortunate. Or like if they've maybe countered your Shield Wall Sentinel, so you weren't able to search for a Wingman Chaplain, you can bring that back and play it again. So there's just a lot of little micro synergies, and it's built around just stabilizing, not letting your opponent really get too far ahead of you. With like your stronger 2-drops or a good defensive speed 3-drop like Gibbering Barricade, and then just trying to hold on the ground while you get these 1/1 birds that can come through either as like pumped birds or just in general attack through. So it can be a frustrating deck to play against, because if they have Shield Ball Sentinels, it's just increasing their in effect Wingman Chaplains in their deck, and if they have Recursion, you can just keep playing them. It can be very annoying. And on your side, you just have to figure out how much damage you can take to establish your game plan, and then just kind of take over, turn the corner. And opponents are going to know, as soon as you play that first wall in these types of colors, they're going to be thinking like, can I counter the Chaplain? Can I, remove the Chaplain with like an enchantment-based removal so they can't recur it? So Destroy Evil can help with that as well. And they're going to really key in on your game plan, because it is an established, deck archetype. in the format. So having those alternative win conditions, like I said, like the blight piles or the bulwarks, can be helpful, but they're not your primary game plan. Other minor synergies, sacking tokens have been made to pump the rest of your team, or sacking tokens to draw to what you need with like a Gibbering Barricade as well. And then our win rate, I guess I should have said, prior deck was around 74, 75. This iteration of the Wingman Chaplain deck is around 73%. If you're able to get a couple more of the Shield Wall Sentinels, you can probably bump this up closer to 75 or greater. And again, a lot of this is driven, you can see, by Archangel Rash, but your Wingmail Chaplain is an uncommon, is providing the same, expected win rate as an Archangel, which is just amazing. And then other good uncommons like Missionary and Dawn's Light, Prayer Binding, cards like that can be useful also. So now on the real controlling side, we'll go to domain control, and this will play different from blue or with our next deck, blue-black control. The blue cards are a common in particular, are very strong in this format. You'll see tons of 2-ofs, and you just want to be trying to interact with your opponent and gain value, gain card advantage, such that you can stick some threats and make it so they can't take out all those threats. So in particular, the strongest cards in these types of decks are going to be like your Weatherseed Treaty and your Micromancer to find cards for value. And then finisher-wise, like a Herd Migration, a Tatiova, and then Marrow and Outrider. Copy really useful at posing a threat that really has to be answered in like the Tatiova and the Marrow, or is coming in and already generating some value like the Outrider, 4 or 5 to the face. And then you'll notice a key common, in my opinion, the best black common, because it can really make a lot of these decks tick in terms of giving you value and inevitability type of potential, as Herbal Repossession, if you can kick it. So in a deck like this with the dual lands that you'll be prioritizing, and then the cards you're going to see, with card draw like Espionage, Geyser, card selection like Impulse, potential card selection with like Velhar for the looting effect, I should be able to get to one or more Repossession, or even searching up with the Micromancer. It's pretty sick to Micromancer getting a Repossession, and then trade off the Micromancer just to get it plus like a Weatherseed Treaty or like a Tatiova or a Mirror's Outriders back, and just play the Micromancer to get like a removal spell or another Repossession, or get back like a Herd Migration, for example. So there's just some sick plays you can do. With Velhar, you'd be able to get back the Herd Migration, so you might bring back like a Velhar, for example, if they've killed. But this is just a lot of really strong uncommons that work together with really strong blue commons to keep the opponent like off balance with the Essence Scatters, plus other instant speed effects like Impulse when you leave a mana for Essence Scatter, Destroy Evil, when you get mana for like a Root Wall, a Pump, or those types of things. So there's a lot of just raw power in this deck, and there's enough synergy to where it can play very effectively with having enough finishers like you would think for a control deck, with like the Marrow, the Tatiova, or just having a couple creatures left because you've killed or traded with or otherwise nullified other creatures, and you just have like a Brawler left, or a Missionary that brought back like a Root Wall or an Outrider or something like that. In terms of what's really driving this deck, there's a ton of cards that lead to this 76 plus expected win rate. It's like, there are rares obviously like Herd Migration and Green Widow, but a lot of the uncommons, Brawler, Treaty, Missionary, Rona's Vortex, Tatiova, Micromancer are all 2+, and then a lot of your blue cards are still providing a ton of value, like the Geyser, and then further down, like Espionage or Essence Scatter, but you still need cards like that because a control deck that can oftentimes lose to 2-drop, 3-drop, particularly on the draw, but sometimes even on the play if they're good 2-drop, 3-drops, or they can protect them. So being able to stop those so you have time to build it with like an Essence Scatter, or hold this for a late threat that is tough for you to manage against, like a Maro or an Outrider or a Micromancer or a Tatiova. Can be huge. And you have just enough interaction with like buying time with the geysers, or particularly if you've already established a threat or two. You can use that to push in damage and keep your opponent off balance to play a more tempo game. So this deck, being a little more controlling, and isn't tempoing out as much as other decks might. And it's still a strong card, particularly because you might be able to get the life gain, set your opponent back on a turn where they spent 4 or 5 plus mana on a threat that hopefully didn't have an ETB effect like an Outrider, and just let you establish your game plan. So this is probably one of my decks that I enjoyed the most. I would lean towards this based on just my play style and the greediness that you can do if you get the right types of lands, and you're just opening or being past some of the better cards, which for the most part you can play. And then our last control deck is based on just the blue shell of control, and in this case probably the best version is supplemented with red, with black, though there's a red, like blue-black kind of control deck as well. But in particular, I like the black because you can get cards like Urborg Repossession, which can kill something early on like turn 2 if you need it, or late because you're just drowning in essence and sorceries. So it ends up being pretty much a kill anything, and it's also -X/-X rather than like destroy. So some of our cards we might be worried about to keep indestructible aren't going to keep this alive, in particular like take up the shield. But you're really leaning in on a lot of really strong 2-drops on the spell side, like Essence Scatter, Impulse, Tribute to Urborg, and then some strong 3-drops, particularly because you can reliably kick Espionage, draw 2 and make them discard 1, can be a 3-for-1, and you have enough time to really leverage that majority of the time. And you're just going to keep trying to play these so you can drop these 1 or 2 mana terrors, and ideally, hopefully, protect them with like a shore up, or if they kill it, bring back your terror or your Haughty Djinn or your Micromancer, or your Vohar or your Cruelty of Gix, with the Urborg Repossession. So you want to make sure you can kick this. So find those, green X dual lands, like the Haunted Mire, Tangadislet, because it's not just creatures. When you kick it, you can get back like that Cruelty of Gix if you are fortunate to get one of those to just get a 3-for-1 from your opponent right there. And then Choke Miasma does have a role in a deck like this, because you're not really going to kill many to any of your cards. Like, you can probably get your Vohar gone from sacrificing to get some effect that you really need, and then maybe just even bring it back with a Repossession, or pump your Knight of Dust Shadow if you actually have that in play. But this is just a good way to not get run over by the white X decks or some of the other domain decks if they're tapped out or they don't have those pump spells in play, to like save their Root Walls or other cards like that. But it just has the controlling shell of 4 of my favorite cards in the format: Scatter, Impulse, Geyser, and Espionage, with tons of other like value-based cards. So this is another way that I'm happy to play. Very excited to open a terror potentially and just try and build towards a deck like this. And we'll see this is also a deck that just has a lot of very good cards, but not like great cards. Like, yeah, Cruelty of Gix and Haughty Djinn are going to play well, but getting your 2-for-1s of your Micromancers, your 3-for-1 of your Espionage, 2-for-1 with Geysers, X-for-1 with Vohar, and other strong cards, you can just play really well. So, and then I think we saw this is a win rate that's about 75% predicted, expected as well. So all that to say, there's multiple different types of decks, but if we were to lump them just into 5, they probably look like these 5 kind of across the spectrum. So I hope this is helpful for when Dominaria United comes back to Arena, or if you want to draft it with friends after the set's off of the program. So yeah, thanks so much, and have a good one.